Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So if you're listening today, you probably just tackled the UPSC prelims yesterday. First off, take a breath. You've definitely cleared a major hurdle.
Definitely. A huge step.
But, now the journey kind of pivots. Whether you're looking ahead to mains this year or maybe building that essential foundation for the next cycle, it's crucial to remember this really is a marathon.
Exactly.
And consistent, focused current affairs prep is, well, it's absolutely non-negotiable, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we're here today. Our mission, really, is to give you a bit of a head start on that next phase. We're diving deep into the source materials from May 26, 2025, Part 1.
Right.
We're pulling out the most important nuggets of knowledge, helping you efficiently stay well-informed and, see the connections between things.
Think of this deep dive as your strategic move.
Yeah.
A way to efficiently process recent events and really understand their core significance.
Yeah.
And you might even find some of these aspects feel a little familiar. We might have touched on some related aspects before.
That's a good point. It's a perfect opportunity for revision, reinforcing concepts you've already studied.
So what's on the docket today?
We've got quite a range, actually. Sources covering everything from health surveillance right here at home to conservation efforts, national governance structures, global finance.
Okay.
And even what China's up to in space. It's quite a mix.
Okay, so let's jump straight in then. Kicking things off with something directly relevant to public health and virus tracking. Our sources have news about the detection of some new COVID-19 variants here in India.
That's right. The data, according to the Indian SARS-CoV-2 Genomics Consortium, thankfully known as INSACOG, much easier, shows one case of the NB.1.8.1 variant and 4 of the LF.7 type have been detected recently.
So, INSACOG.
Right.
Well, we hear that name popping up, whenever there's news about variants. What exactly is this body? How did it come about?
Well, the sources tell us it was established by the government of India via a Union Cabinet resolution back in December 2020. It's actually a joint initiative involving the Union Ministry of Health and the Department of Biotechnology, or DBT, but also bringing in key scientific research bodies like CSIR and ICMR.
So it's like a network then, sort of working together.
Precisely. It's a consortium of 54 laboratories spread across the country. Their core function is monitoring the genomic variations of SARS-CoV-2.
How do they do that?
They do this through what's called sentinel sequencing, basically keeping a close watch on samples from specific locations. The National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, in Delhi helps coordinate this, working with the Central Surveillance Unit under the IDSP, the Integrated Disease Surveillance Program.
I remember earlier on in the pandemic, it seemed like their main focus was really on international travelers coming in. Has that changed? Has the mandate shifted?
Yes, it seems it has. While initially it was crucial for tracking variants coming in from abroad, it's now evolved to a more proactive role, focusing on early detection of variants emerging within India itself.
Right, within the country.
Yeah.
And their specific objectives, as outlined in the sources, seem quite strategic. Early detection of variants that could have, public health implications. Figuring out which variants are involved in unusual events like vaccine breakthroughs or these super spreader outbreaks.
Crucial.
And then linking all that genetic data with what's actually happening on the ground, the epidemiological data.
And that linkage is critical. Understanding the genetic makeup of the virus circulating in a specific outbreak or super spreader event allows public health teams to, tailor their response much more effectively.
Yeah.
It's using that lab science to inform real-world intervention and really strengthen our defense against outbreaks.
And for you, listening in, preparing for mains, or just staying informed, understanding bodies like INSACOG is vital. It's part of grasping India's public health infrastructure and how it responds to these kinds of threats. Shows that intersection of science, health policy, and governance.
Definitely. Okay, shifting gears now. From microscopic threats to conserving large landscapes, our sources bring us some really interesting news from Rajasthan regarding environmental conservation.
Oh, yeah. What's happening there?
This state has apparently started classifying certain community-protected lands as forests.
Now, these aren't just any lands, are they? We're talking about Oran lands.
That's right. And what's fascinating here is that Orans aren't just patches of land. They are traditional sacred groves in Rajasthan.
Sacred groves, right.
Dedicated to deities, managed by rural communities based on socio-religious traditions that, go back generations.
So they're not just ecological zones, but cultural and religious hubs, too. That's interesting.
Exactly. They serve as centers for socio-religious activities, hosting annual festivals and fairs. And the sheer scale is surprising. Rajasthan has around 25,000 Oran lands.
25,000. Wow.
Covering a significant 6 lakh hectares.
6 lakh hectares. That's a massive area.
Yeah.
And these lands are used by local communities for practical things too, right? Like grazing livestock, collecting forest products.
Absolutely. They help with natural water filtration. It's really integrated into the local livestock economy.
That makes sense.
And they often contain crucial water bodies like talab, nadi, wells, streams, lifelines, really, especially in arid areas like the Thar Desert. Some Orans there even feature ancient Govardhan or Shilalik petrographs near these water sources.
Oh, ancient petrographs too. Wow. And some of these Orans can be enormous, I gather.
They can. The Hadarya Mata Oran in Jaisalmer, for example, is mentioned as covering over 17,800 hectares.
Huge.
And critically, for conservation, Orans provide natural habitat for some incredibly important species. The most notable one is the Great Indian Bustard, the jeeb.
Ah, yes, the jeeb. Critically endangered.
India's state bird of Rajasthan, critically endangered, protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. And this links back, as you said, we might have touched on the jeeb before, a great example of how different current affairs pieces connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the policy context is important here. Wasn't there an issue with how they were classified before?
That's right. Rajasthan's own 2023 forest policy classified Orans just as general community land, which, well, it was seen as insufficient protection, particularly against encroachment.
Right, not strong enough.
And that's where the Supreme Court came in. In a landmark judgment on December 18th, 2024, the Supreme Court recognized Oran lands as forests under the Forest Conservation Act 1980.
Ah, okay. That's significant.
Very. This provides them with much stronger legal protection against deforestation and encroachment. It aligns that traditional community conservation with formal legal frameworks.
So for your environment and geography prep, understanding concepts like sacred groves, community-based conservation, and how legal recognition, especially via Supreme Court directive, can bolster these practices, and how they link to protecting critically endangered species like the jiviai, that's really crucial. It shows that interplay of community, culture, law, and ecology.
Definitely. Okay, moving from environment to national governance. Our sources mention the recent 10th Governing Council meeting of NITI Aayog.
NITI Aayog, right, held in New Delhi, chaired by the Prime Minister. Theme was Viksit Rajya for Viksit Bharat at 2047. We hear this name constantly in policy discussions. Let's unpack what it is and, maybe more importantly, what it isn't. Described as the premier policy think tank for the government of India.
That's a key distinction, a think tank. It was established on January 1st, 2015, via a Union Cabinet resolution replacing the old Planning Commission.
Right, replace the Planning Commission.
But crucially, unlike some other bodies, it's neither a constitutional body, so not created by the Constitution itself, nor a statutory body created by an act of Parliament.
So purely an executive decision created it.
Exactly, by an executive resolution.
So it's more of a strategic advisory body then?
Yes, basically, with a clear twin mandate. One is to oversee the adoption, implementation, and monitoring of Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, across the country.
Okay, SDGs.
Yeah.
And the second part?
To promote both competitive and cooperative federalism. This means encouraging states and union territories to be actively involved and collaborate in the development process, fostering that partnership between the center and the states.
The composition seems quite broad looking at the source material.
It is. The chairperson, of course, is the Prime Minister. The Governing Council is extensive. PM, chief ministers of all states and UTs with legislatures, lieutenant governors of other UTs.
Right.
Up to 4 union ministers nominated by the PM as ex officio members, the vice chairperson appointed by the PM, full-time members, and then special invitees, too.
And they also have regional councils for specific issues, don't they?
Yes, they can set up regional councils for particular durations to tackle specific problems relevant to certain regions. These are also convened by the PM and include the CMs or LGs of the areas concerned.
And the day-to-day head, the CEO.
That's the CEO, yeah. Appointed by the PM for a fixed tenure, holds the rank of Secretary to the Government of India.
Looking at their objectives, they seem to cover quite a lot of ground from like grassroots planning right up to national security and innovation.
Exactly. Key objectives include formulating credible, inclusive village-level plans, focusing particularly on marginalized groups, integrating national security into economic policies, fostering a knowledge, innovation, and entrepreneurship ecosystem, and serving as a platform to resolve those tricky intersectoral and interdepartmental coordination issues.
So really understanding NITI Aayog, its structure, its mandate, its functions, is pretty fundamental to grasping India's current policymaking landscape. Definitely a core topic you need to be familiar with for mains.
No doubt. Okay, connecting that idea of governance and institutions to the economy now, our sources report on a recent colloquium organized by the Department of Financial Services, DFS, under the Ministry of Finance.
Right.
This meeting was specifically for chairpersons of DRTs and presiding officers of DRTs.
DRTs. Debt Recovery Tribunals. Here's where it gets really interesting for financial stability. These are crucial quasi-judicial bodies, right?
They are quasi-judicial. They were established under the Recovery of Debts due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act, 1993. You might sometimes see it referred to as the Recovery of Debts and Bankruptcy Act, 1993. It's essentially the same framework, just evolved slightly over time.
Got it. And their main job, what do they actually do?
Their primary role is adjudicating debt recovery disputes, specifically involving banks and financial institutions.
So if someone defaults on a loan and it's like over a certain amount.
Right. They handle loan default cases where the debt amount is 20 lakh or more, and the focus is specifically on secured debts.
Okay.
They also hear securitization applications, or SAs, which are filed under the Sarfisi Act of 2002. That relates to enforcing security interests.
How many of these DRTs are actually operating across the country?
Currently, there are 39 DRTs functioning across India. Each one is headed by a presiding officer.
And this presiding officer, they need specific qualifications.
Yes, the sources specify they need to be qualified to be a district judge.
Okay. And they have specific powers. It's not quite like a regular court, is it?
Well, they are quasi-judicial. Section 22 of that 1993 Act gives them specific powers. Things like summoning witnesses, compelling document production, receiving evidence through affidavits, conducting proceedings even if one party isn't present, that's ex parte proceedings, and issuing commissions. Their jurisdiction is territorial, so they cover specific geographical regions.
And if someone isn't happy with a DRT decision, is there an appeal process?
Yes, absolutely. That's where the appellate level comes in. You appeal to a Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal, or DRT.
DRT, okay.
These are the higher bodies. They ensure judicial oversight, uniformity, and legal clarity in these debt recovery matters.
How many DRTs are there? Fewer than the DRTs, I assume.
Yes, fewer. There are currently 5 DRTs functioning in India, each headed by a chairperson. They play that vital role in ensuring uniformity and the correct application of the law.
Understanding these quasi-judicial bodies, DRTs and DRTs, is really important, Matt, for both the economy and governance aspects of your prep, especially looking at how India maintains financial sector stability and resolves disputes within that system.
Absolutely key. Okay, let's broaden our perspective now. Moving from national institutions to international finance, we have news that Algeria has officially joined the BRICS-backed New Development Bank.
The NDB. That sounds like an interesting expansion, particularly into North Africa. What exactly is the New Development Bank?
Right. So it was formerly known as the BRICS Development Bank. It's a multilateral development bank set up and operated primarily by the BRICS states, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
And their core goal, what are they trying to achieve?
Primarily to mobilize resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects, and importantly, not just within the BRICS countries themselves, but also in other emerging economies and developing nations.
Right. When did this bank actually get started? Feels relatively recent compared to, say, the World Bank.
It is. The idea was first discussed during the BRICS summit in New Delhi back in 2012. The agreement to establish it was signed at the Fortaleza summit in Brazil in 2014.
Okay.
And it officially started operations on July 21st, 2015.
Where is it headquartered?
Shanghai in China. It also has regional offices, one in South Africa and one in Brazil. And membership, as Algeria joining shows, is open to any member of the United Nations.
Interesting. And the capital structure. That often tells you a lot about the power dynamics in these institutions.
It does. It started with an authorized capital of USD 100 billion. and an initial subscribed capital of USD 50 billion. Now, a key point from the sources here is that this initial subscribed capital was equally distributed among the 5 founding BRICS members.
Equally distributed. So unlike the World Bank or ADB, where voting power is usually weighted by contribution.
Exactly. That's highlighted as a unique feature. Each member in the NDB has equal voting power, regardless of their economic size or capital subscription.
That is different. And the governance structure?
It's governed by a board of governors, typically the finance ministers of the 5 BRICS countries, and a board of directors. The presidency and vice presidency roles rotate among the 5 BRICS founders.
So Algeria joining is quite significant then. It highlights this evolving landscape of international financial institutions and, the growing influence of blocs like BRICS, certainly relevant for understanding international relations and global economic shifts.
Definitely part of that changing picture. Okay, let's swing back now from global finance to ecology and biodiversity right here in India. There's news of a new species discovery recently reported from Meghalaya.
Oh, new species discoveries are always exciting. What was found this time?
A team from Gauhati University discovered Schistera densiclava. It's a new species of loach, specifically a troglophilic loach.
Troglophilic. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, it relates to its habitat. This fish was found in Krem Majimbuina, which is a limestone cave near Majimbun village in the East Kazi Hills district of Meghalaya.
Ah, Meghalaya's caves. Famous for them.
Exactly, a region known for its complex cave systems.
So it's a cave-dwelling fish.
Yes, found deep inside this particular cave. And the sources note it remains untouched by tourism, so it's in a pretty pristine condition. This discovery actually brings the total number of known cave-associated fish species in Meghalaya up to 6 now.
6 species, okay. Now, what's particularly fascinating about this cave fish? Because often don't cave-dwelling species tend to lose their eyesight or their color over time.
That's precisely the unique characteristic highlighted for Schistera densiclava. Unlike many cave-adapted fish that evolve, without functional eyes or pigmentation, this species retains fully functional eyes and distinct body coloration.
Ah, so that's what troglophilic implies. Then it can live in caves, but isn't exclusively adapted for caves. It can survive outside, too.
Exactly. A troglophile can live both inside and outside caves. It belongs to the loach family, Nemachialidae.
What does it look like? The sources describe it.
They do. It has a striking pattern. 14 to 20 black bars on a pale yellow-green body, and it has a thick black stripe at the base of its dorsal fin. That thick stripe is actually what inspired its name. Densiclava apparently means thick stripe in Latin.
Densiclava, thick stripe. Got it. And any differences mentioned between the males and females?
Yes, the sources mention clear sexual dimorphism. Males tend to be slimmer, with more irregular markings and puffier cheeks, apparently, while females are plumper with more regular markings.
Interesting detail. Discoveries like this really underscore India's incredible biodiversity and the ongoing importance of exploring and conserving these unique ecological niches like cave systems, highly relevant for both environment and science topics in your prep.
Absolutely. Okay, launching into a completely different realm now, space exploration. Our sources indicate China is preparing to launch its Tianwen-2 mission.
Tianwen. Tianwen was China's Mars mission, wasn't it? Orbiter, lander, rover. So what is Tianwen-2 targeting?
Its primary target is a near-Earth asteroid called 469219 Kamo'olawa. The mission aims to survey it and, crucially, collect samples from it.
Sample return from an asteroid.
Okay.
What are the technical details mentioned? Launch vehicle, site.
Yep. It's set to launch on a Long March 3B rocket launch site, Xichang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan Province. And the agency, of course, is the China National Space Administration, CNSA.
And it's not just stopping at Kamo'olawa, is that right? There's another destination.
Correct. After the asteroid sampling, Tianwen-2 is scheduled to travel further out, heading to the main asteroid belt to study a comet called 311P Pan-STARRS.
Okay, 2 targets.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Kamo'olawa. What's special about this particular near-Earth asteroid?
Well, it was discovered fairly recently, in 2016, and it belongs to a really rare class of objects called quasi-satellites of Earth.
Quasi-satellites. What does that mean? It doesn't orbit Earth like the moon, does it?
No, not exactly. It orbits the sun, but its orbit is gravitationally influenced by Earth because it comes quite close.
Okay.
So while it's orbiting the sun from Earth's perspective, it appears to sort of alternate between leading and trailing our planet. It gives the illusion of orbiting Earth, even though it isn't technically.
Huh. That's weird. How long has it been doing that?
It's estimated to have been in this peculiar orbit for about 100 years and expected to continue for maybe 300 more, though these quasi-satellite orbits aren't usually stable in the very long term.
Fascinating. And how are they planning to collect samples from an asteroid? That sounds incredibly technically challenging.
It is. They'll primarily use the touch-and-go technique.
Touch and go.
Yeah, the spacecraft briefly hovers near the surface, a robotic arm releases either a projectile or maybe a puff of gas, and the particles kicked up are captured.
Okay.
There's also a backup method mentioned called anchor and attach, which sounds more involved, 4 robotic arms drilling for subsurface material. But the main plan is touch and go.
And this method, touch and go, have other missions used it?
Yes, it's similar to what NASA used for its OSIRIS-REx mission to Bennu and what Japan's Hayabusa 2 did at Ryugu, so it's a proven technique.
This mission sounds like it's part of a much larger, ambitious strategy for China in space exploration.
It absolutely is. It's part of their Tianwen series, which apparently means heavenly questions. As you mentioned, Tianwen-1 in 2020 was their successful first Mars mission.
Right.
And looking ahead, Tianwen-3 is expected around 2028. That one aims for a Mars sample return mission.
Yow, Mars sample return.
Which would place China among a very, very select group of nations planning or capable of bringing samples back from another planet.
So understanding missions like Tianwen-2 is key, not just for your science and technology prep, but also increasingly for international relations, as space capabilities become, well, a bigger part of the global picture.
Definitely. Okay, turning now to international relations closer to home and maritime law. Our sources report that South Korea has expressed concern to China regarding a recently declared no-sail zone in the Yellow Sea.
The Yellow Sea, right, that seems like a frequent point